Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again for our Self-Build Hour. As a reminder, those of you who are perhaps new to the Self-Build Hour, we've put this together as a way for self-builders to gather information about the self-build process from the convenience of your own home. Every month, on the second Thursday of every month, we have a live seminar episode that we have focused on a specific topic, and that presenter and expert within the self-build industry is able to present on their expertise, and then you as viewers have the opportunity to participate by asking questions live. We ask that you put these questions into the Q&A section. There may be some of you who don't have access to Q&A on the top bar of Teams. If for some reason you don't, feel free to put it in the chat box. But if you have Q&A, we do ask that you put it in that one. So this month, we're going to be talking all about VAT reclaim. This is a question that we get asked quite frequently in terms of how the VAT reclaim process works, what's required, what projects qualify, what projects don't qualify. And that's something that as architects, we really don't have the expertise to give you the in-depth knowledge that you need to have as self-builders. So we're really pleased to be joined today by Andrew Jones. He's also known as the VAT Man. And he's the managing director of a specialist consultancy that deals specifically with VAT reclaim on new builds, conversions, and reinstatements. So he's been involved in over 3,500 VAT reclaims in the last 10 years. And we thank Andrew for joining us today to share his specialist knowledge on this process and give us our insights and guidance on how to navigate that process. So I'll hand it over to Andrew now, who will start his presentation. And once throughout the process, if you can type any questions that come to mind into the Q&A and chat, we'll go through those at the end of his presentation and ask those live and just keep the questions coming. Thank you very much, Andrew. We look forward to your presentation.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's all good.
Excellent, okay. I'm a bit of a dinosaur at this, I'm sorry guys, it's not the format I usually use, so bear with me. But Jenny's been fantastic the last 24 hours, so hopefully everything will go all right. So I can see some names in the guest list that I already know, so hi guys. But anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Andrew Jones. Lots of people know me as just the VAT Man. Over the last 14 years, I've been processing DIY VAT reclaims, and in that time, we've submitted over 13,000 claims, claiming back about £35 million from HMRC for members of the general public. So that's a brief intro to who I am. So can I just very quickly, while I'm playing with this, if I can just thank Alan and Jenny for inviting me, and thank you all for being present today, because it is in the day and so forth, so thanks ever so much. So who and why, and who should be here, and why we're having this VAT-free and so on and so on. So the scheme is called the DIY scheme, also known as VAT 431, which is for members of the general public. So that's just Joe Blogs, not businesses, and not somebody building to sell in the first instance. Now, the first instance term is quite important. So it's for people creating a new dwelling, so that can be a new house, greenfield site, knocking something down and rebuilding, or converting something that wasn't a habitable dwelling previously. Now, why are we doing a VAT reclaim, and why is it VAT free and so on? So if you were to buy a new house from a national house builder, a local developer, or visit the estate agent and buy a house new to you, well, that is VAT free. There's no VAT on houses. But when you visit the builders, merchants and so on, you have to pay VAT. So this scheme is a way of putting you as members of the general public back on the same level playing field as a developer and building a new house VAT-free. So the scheme is split into two sections, and it is quite important from the outset that you know which side of the fence you sit on. The first one is known as VAT 431NB, which quite creatively refers to as new build. The other being VAT 431C, which is a conversion. Now, there is no middle ground here. You are either one or the other. I quite often hear it said, I'm doing a new build conversion, where somebody is, for argument's sake, converting a barn, but they're adding an extension to the back. The wording of your planning would dictate which category you fall into. So there is no middle ground, there's no split liability between both. And it is important that you know which one you are, which you'll see shortly now. So what falls into what? So new build would be self-build, new build, a knockdown and rebuild or a replacement dwelling, and completing a new build after a builder or taking over someone else's unfinished project. It could be there was financial difficulty or a breakdown in a relationship which left a semi-built house. The person who takes that over is the person who can benefit from the VAT position. Then VAT 431C, converting a building not previously lived in. So most commonly, barns and churches and chapels are widely available at the moment, but it could be commercial to residential of any sort. The dentist is retiring in town, and it's getting fashionable now we're moving back into the towns and cities again. So these are really good buildings that are available. If you convert something that's not been lived in previously or not lived in for 10 years or more, so that could be an abandoned dwelling. In my little village here in South Wales, when I was a child, there was one that had a tree growing through the roof, and the growth there was terrible. But it was a shortcut to the playing fields. But I used to run through the garden because I used to think the house was haunted. Somebody in the last 5 years took over that house and have now reinstated it, and they benefited from a VAT position. So over and above meeting, sorry guys. Right, over and above meeting the criteria we just passed, you need to have a couple of other things in place. It must have planning permission. Now it could be, especially with the reinstating something, it could be that you didn't need planning permission, but to qualify for a VAT reclaim and zero rating, you do actually need planning permission. I'm really sorry, guys, I've missed one here. There we are, that's fine. Okay, so it must also only be for yourself or a direct family member. So you cannot build initially to sell and use this scheme for a VAT reclaim. So it can be for yourself, it can be for the bank of mum and dad can be assisting and so forth, that's not an issue, but it must be for yourselves to live in or a direct family member in the first instance. So that's not initially sold or rented, but it can be a holiday home for yourselves. So if you've got a second house down somewhere on the coast and you're living in London, we'll say, and you're going down Devon and Cornwall on the weekends or over the summer, that's fine, as long as it's not rented out or trading as an Airbnb or something similar to that. And this is quite key, although mostly for conversions, it must not have a planning restriction in relation to its future disposal. What I mean by that is it cannot be classed as an annex to something else, be it the main farmhouse or your new build. It must be a new dwelling in its own right. It must be something that you could put on the market and sell. Or it could be something that you could sell the existing dwelling if you've built something in the garden, and you could split the deed and sell the main house and move into this, then it qualifies. But if there is a planning restriction or logistically it can't be sold away from the dwelling, from a main dwelling, it does not qualify. You must be creating a new dwelling. So things that don't qualify: outbuildings, extensions, refurbishments of dwellings, irrespective of somebody saying, I'm trebling the size of the house, etc., etc., it does not qualify. Loft conversions, annexes and granny flats, and renovations or extensions of existing dwellings, and listed buildings. There is no longer any VAT incentive for listed buildings. So a listed building, unless you meet the criteria that I touched on just now on the previous slide, it does not qualify for VAT reclaim. Irrespective of which one of those routes, and this is quite a common error, irrespective of which one of those routes to market that you land up, your project will come out 0 rated at the end. But the route to market is different. So this is why it's important to know from the outset which one you qualify for. If you're doing a new build, any contractor coming to site to do work for you should not be charging you VAT in the first instance. So that's, for example, a turnkey project, a 90% turnkey project where the builder's done most of the project, but you've been involved in maybe purchasing the kitchen and purchasing your bathroom and the tiles, right? Then any contractor coming to site at any point should not be charging you VAT. So a turnkey project would be VAT-free for the contractor's whole project. If you were subcontracting and dividing the project yourself, or maybe you have a trade where you're bringing in your mates, your friends, people within the trade that you know, none of those should be charging you VAT in the first instance on a new build. So that's your ground worker, potentially the SIPS company, the timber frame company, the bricklayer, the roofer, the electrician, the plumber, anybody that comes to site for 1 hour or for a whole year to do work for you, none of them should be charging you VAT. If Peter the plumber, and he's someone I pick on a lot, sorry Peter, if Peter the plumber says, I don't do this VAT-free mumbo jumbo, Andrew, I'll give you a VAT invoice and you go and claim it back, you will not get any of that VAT back. And where I'm saying they should not be charging you the VAT, that applies to the labour and any materials that they use, that they bring to site. So the whole project, you've employed them to do something for you, they should not be charging you VAT. So on a new build, the only place you would claim back VAT is purchases you make. Jewson, Travis Perkins, B&Q, your local independent merchant, something online that just gets delivered, even Amazon purchases, anything of this sort that you buy, as long as it meets the criteria, you will pay the VAT and claim it back at the end. But a contractor must not, should not be charging you VAT. Slightly different on the barn conversion or any sort of conversion. A contractor coming to site should charge you the reduced rate of VAT, which is currently 5%. Then exactly the same as the new build, when you go shopping, making purchases, just making purchases, you pay 20% VAT, and that is where your VAT reclaim kicks in. But on a conversion, you can reclaim the 5% that you've paid your contractor plus the 20% that you pay at B&Q, Travis Perkins, Jewson, etc. So you get all your VAT back, just the same, but how you get there is slightly different. So again, Peter the plumber says on your barn conversion, I don't do this reduced rate mumbo jumbo. I will give you a 20% VAT invoice and you claim it back. You will not get any of that VAT back because you should have paid 5%, not the 20%. So you won't get your 5% back. You won't get the difference being 15%, although it's not quite 15%, but you see what I mean. You won't get any of your VAT back. It's key that you get your documentation correct from the outset. So that's 0 from contractors on a new build and 5% from contractors on a barn conversion. One of the most common errors regarding a VAT reclaim, and this is this is changed on the 5th of December 23, just passed. You must submit a VAT reclaim within 6 months of your building control completion certificate. That's irrespective of any works you have left. The completion certificate is a definitive trigger for submitting a VAT reclaim, and you have 6 months. Now, it's not 6 months to finish off and get your work done. It's 6 months to get your documentation in order and into HMRC. So you need to be finishing the project, making any purchases prior to the date of your building control completion certificate. Now, we all know how difficult doing a self, maybe you don't, but most people know how difficult a self-build can be in relation to the funding and the finance, especially when things have been going through the roof price-wise. Lots of people get to 80–90% of the project and the bank is dry, the funding's gone, you are in a position where you can't quite complete, and maybe you can't complete to the point of your building control completion certificate. But you do know that you've got this pot of gold, this VAT reclaim to do, which would allow you to complete the project. So there are other ways to appease HMRC in relation when you don't have a building control completion certificate. And I'm really sorry, guys, I should have put the Scottish version in here with AC being a Scottish company. So apologies, especially to Alan, sorry. So the examples that I have on here, the left-hand example, the valuation office example, applies to England and Wales. And in England and Wales, we have the valuation office, which is the company that creates your council tax banding. In Scotland, you have individual methods for each individual planning authority. And in Ireland, there is one authority, very similar to the valuation office, that bands the property. But in Scotland, each local authority does it on their own merit in a different format. If you cannot get your building control completion certificate, but you do want to cash in your VAT, but be aware you can only cash it in the once, at the point of potentially moving in and getting, if you're good people, you would have notified your local authority that you need to pay council tax on the new build. They will in turn contact the valuation office, who will band your property for council tax. Now, you will receive a document in the mail that looks something like the one on screen or very similar. HMRC will accept that as a trigger for submitting your VAT reclaim, but again, it needs to be submitted within 6 months of date of that document. Now, and I've been here myself, where I built a house, got it valued for council tax, and 12 months went by, and I could have done with that bit of a cash injection to get us over the line and complete. But I couldn't get to the point of getting a building control completion certificate. If you're on good terms with your building control officer, you can ask them to write a letter. It needs to be on local authority or the private company letterhead. It needs to be dated and signed by your building control officer or his senior. It can be emailed to you as a PDF, but it cannot be an email in itself. So that when you print it off, it looks like a letter, and that's fine, but it cannot be an email. And the letter needs to read that the house is habitable and fit for purpose, but cannot be signed off by building control for the following reasons. And again, you must submit, if you're using that, within 6 months of your of your date on your letter. So that's quite important. Other things that often come up in topic, the names on the invoices. People often say to me, oh, Andrew, my builder bought stuff, but it says reference my project, or I've been to B&Q, I've had that orange till receipt. Well, I think it's white paper these days, but traditionally it was orange till receipt, but that doesn't have my name on. So I've run around the store trying to catch the manager to give me an invoice with my name on. You don't actually need invoices in your name. You walk into a random builder's merchants and they print the receipt and it reads cash sale. that's fine. Your B&Q, your Wix receipts don't have your name on, fine. It's only an issue if it has someone else's name on there. As I mentioned, your contractor, booking to him and so on, or someone else's name, a family member, a business that you're associated with, or you've bought something through work because work get a cracking deal on XYZ. You've gone and bought it through work. That is a problem in relation to your receipts and your VAT reclaim. It could be a costly mistake. So if you have this dilemma, and quite often a self-build is done by someone who's in the trade, you need to open new accounts. So for me now, Andrew Jones the Vatman Limited or Andrew Jones the Vatman is not me personally. I would need receipts in my name, Andrew Jones. So if you've, another example, you may have a property portfolio and you've called yourself Andrew Jones Lettings and you've got a Screwfix account in that name. That cannot be used for your new build or your conversion. So open new accounts at Screwfix, use your partner, your wife, your significant other's email address and open a new account. Or if you're in the trade and you're down the builders merchants, it's easy to say, this gallon of Feb is on the business account and these 4 boxes of screws and nails, they need to go on my self-build account. Keep it separate, keep it transparent. Once HMRC see a mention of a business of any sort, they're going to start looking at it deeper, which is going to delay your money, possibly cost you money. Right, I mentioned earlier about contractors coming to site to do work for you, should not charge you VAT in the first instance, or should be charging you 5% VAT, and that applies to the labour and the materials they build. So if the company, the gentleman, the business concerned is not VAT registered, it's not a problem using them, don't get put off, but then you need to purchase the materials yourself. Because if a non-VAT registered company brings material to site, they are going to pass it on to you at the price, which includes the VAT. And they're not able to give you a VAT receipt because they're not VAT registered. So by all means, don't get put off not using someone who's not VAT registered. But if you do not allow them to make purchases. You buy the materials and bring it, get it to site and allow them to do labour only, VAT free. Now, on these, there's about 18 self-build shows around the country every year. And the tendency is that you see the same people over maybe the 2 or 3 year period of their build. And it could be on the first time you meet that they've not put a brick in the ground. You meet on the end of the 12 months later at the same event, and the people say, project's going well. The only problem is we're at wind and watertight. The only problem we're getting is persuading people to do 5% or 0 rating VAT. We're finding it difficult. How do we evidence, how do we prove to them that this needs to be the case? Now, ideally, giving someone your planning permission decision notice should be suffice, so that would appease them. So if they get a VAT inspection and we'll say on a new build, they've not charged you the VAT, and they get VAT inspected, and the VAT inspector says, this Andrew Jones guy, you didn't charge him VAT. Why is that then? Oh, I remember Andrew's project. It's a new build, VAT free. Prove it to me. So then turn the next page, or you bring it in from your cloud system or whatever systems that contractor has. And he says, there you go, look, there's a copy of the planning permission. So that should appease a contractor. But there's a but. A lot of companies are generational companies. What I mean by that is the person you're dealing with today is actually the grandson of the person who started the business. And granddad taught the son who taught his son, so he knows the way granddad used to do things. And he's been told that you should have a VAT exemption certificate or a reduced rate of VAT certificate in order to only charge you 5% or charge you 0. There is no such animal today. Back in the day, we all had HMRC, Customs and Excise offices in all our major towns and cities. And if you were undertaking a project of this type, then you would visit there and say, oh, I'm doing this, here's my planning, etc. And the officer from Customs and Excise would give you a file and a booklet, which is very informative, actually, far easier than what they have today. I actually based our documentation on it. It was a good, handy bit of information. But on the inside back cover of the booklet, there was a certificate, and the officer at Customs and Excise would fill in the certificate and give it to you, and you could then in turn hand this to your different contractors and say, look, this evidence is that I'm a 5% job or I'm a 0 rated job. There is no such thing today. But a lot of even generational accountants will tell their clients, oh, they should have a certificate to cover that, but there is no such animal. So as I said, giving them your planning permission should be suffice. But if during your project you're ever in a position where you're somewhat stuck because they're adamant that you should have a certificate, look me up, find me, we'll get it sorted for you by hook or by crook, okay? So, but as I said, the planning permission decision notice should be suffice. So things that come up often. You've heard me mention that it must be for yourselves in the first instance or family members. How long do we have to stay in the property afterwards? There is actually, as far as the VAT is concerned, there is no guidance. So on Monday, when the VAT refund hits your bank, on Tuesday, you could, in theory, put the for sale sign up outside. And quite a few of my clients do. But there is GDPR, there is an issue there on capital gains, which I'm sorry, I'm not able to advise you on. So please do be careful and look into that. Annexes and outbuildings. I'm also going to cover garages and workshops in the same one here. People say, well, I've got this on my new build, it's part of it, etc., etc. So what qualifies is the house itself and all your hard landscaping outside and a basic car garage. And what I mean by that is, irrespective of how many bays it is, you can only reclaim for the section that actually stores cars. So if you've got a workshop, you've split your garage, you've divided it, the back third of the garage is a workshop, or you've got a man cave there, or in the loft, you put attic trusses on your garage, or you've got a swimming pool or a gym or a man cave at the top of the garden, that building will not qualify. And back to the garage, you can only reclaim for the section where your car is stored. So if you do have that man cave upstairs or an office or a flat, that will not qualify. So you'd have to not claim for the staircase going up, the plasterboard, the lighting, the chipboard flooring, all this type of thing that's created the room or created the man cave or whatever. All that would have to be deducted from your VAT reclaim. And also where I've said about the contractor not charging you VAT or charging you 5%, they should actually be charging you 20% for those parts. So if you've got a swimming pool and it's in a building at the top of the garden, that swimming pool should be at 20% on the new build and 20% on a barn conversion, irrespective of the fact that your project is either or and reduced rate or zero. The swimming pool at the top of the garden, the gym, etc., does not qualify. So if your electrician's doing work there, he should really be charging you 20% on those, and that applies to all those different trades. Fitted wardrobes is a major bone of contention. HMRC's guidance says that they do qualify, and they do, but I prefer to tell you that it doesn't, because the criteria for achieving zero status on fitted wardrobes is nigh on impossible. I'll give you the criteria, although most men and all the women that are tuned in are going to think, well, that's not happening. The criteria is when you open the doors, you must be able to see the back wall. And that can be a plasterboarded wall, a plastered wall, a painted wall. But you must be able to see the bare back wall. But this is the killer. Inside the wardrobe, you're allowed nothing more than one rail and one shelf the length of the wardrobe. So no multiples, different lengths, these for trousers, this for shirt, full length dresses, shoe racks, nothing like that at all. So let's be honest, if you're going to the effort of putting fitted wardrobes, you're not going to accept that. So basically it's not happening. It'd be far better if they just said it doesn't qualify. So things to remember then from what I've given you today. The timeline for submitting, 6 months. The building control completion certificate is non-negotiable. It's a definitive trigger. The other options I've given you are open. It's a choice, but it must be done within 6 months of the date of the document you're using as evidence. But remember, the completion certificate is a definitive trigger. The names on the invoices, you don't have to have every document with your name. Don't worry if you've moved houses, you lived on site, you were in with your in-laws, that didn't go very well, and you were in the existing house until you got to a certain point and you sold it. All that is acceptable, it's fine. The only problem comes when it's in someone else's name or a business, be it affiliated with you or not. It must be in your names personally. It can be in either or, both, initials, so on. None of that's an issue, but it cannot be in someone else's name. Make sure you pay the correct rate of VAT applicable to your project. So that's the 5% on a conversion, 0 on a new build. If your contractor's not sure, feel free to give me a shout and I'm quite happy to speak to their accountant who will speak to them in turn. Keep your documents safe, clean, and specifically out of sunlight. And what I mean by that is, the vast majority of suppliers print, most of them have got dot matrix type printers. Don't know if you're familiar with this. And the print is very light, especially Jewson, Travis Perkins and so forth. You put that on the dash of the car or the van, it's there on a sunny day. We do get sunny days. On a sunny day, within two days, that's a blank piece of paper. If you imagine that every invoice, every bit of paper is worth 50 quid, you've just lost 50 quid on the dash of the car. Get into the habit of going home each night, putting your receipt in a box, safe, dry, and out of sunlight. You only get one opportunity to submit the claim. There's not a lot of wiggle room. It needs to be pretty much correct. HMRC would love you to make a mistake and they find a reason to reduce or refuse your claim. So just be careful there. I've given you quite a lot of information and I'm very grateful to Alan and Jenny and the rest of the team for today's opportunity. If you want to see this presentation or something very similar again, Alan will be emailing you, or maybe not Alan, isn't it? But one of the team will be emailing you a copy of today's chat. I do have a YouTube channel that does do a lot of one-offs, one questions and a small answer very quickly, 2-minute videos, things that you might not think of. So that might well be worth a look. And that's me pretty much done. But does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was really informative. I think we can stop the share screen and just bring our faces up to the screen.
Yeah, no problem.
And there have been quite a few questions that have come in during the course of the chat. I will hand it over to Alan to...
Hi, Andrew.
Okay. Hi, Al, you all right?
Good, really good. That was brilliant. Thank you. I think it was very engaging and in your usual great manner. So I think we could all probably listen to you for hours talking. So yeah, no, there's been, as I say, there's been lots of engagement, which is really good to see. So I'm just going to go from top to bottom on here. So
they didn't understand me.
Well, we'll put subtitles on for when we go live, so don't worry, Andrew.
Good man.
For me as well. So should VAT be charged for new service connections to a site?
Okay, so it shouldn't be, but it's not quite as straightforward as that. Gas, electric and water qualifies for zero rating if it's a new supply in on, say, a greenfield site. Right? And then if there's no gas or electric going to a barn conversion, but I'll use barn conversion as the term, right? But any conversion, that should be at 5%. Now, it's quite difficult for the electric man who comes to view the site and so forth. He knows it's a new build. That paperwork goes off to the office generates the quote comes through, then credit control at one of these companies is chasing you for payment. But normally they do tend to instantly put 20% on it. Just speak to your service providers and get them to reduce it down to 0 or down to 5% for whichever project you're doing. But if there was, say if it's a knockdown and rebuild and there was electric going in there and all you've had done is it disconnected and you need it connected back, so it's the same supply, that would be at 20% and it's not reclaimable. Okay. So it's only reclaimable if you've got a new supply.
Yeah.
And,
okay. And
none of that applies to open reach.
Okay.
It's only gas, electric, and water.
And I know Kelly's project. It's a brownfield site that will be a new dwelling. How does that there'll be no connection on that? So yeah.
As long as there's no existing going in there, and if there is existing, if that gets scrapped and a new line goes in, that's fine. But if you upgrade an existing or just disconnect and reconnect, that does not qualify.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So there's one here from Steve. Hi, Andrew. I find myself getting squeezed by a late planning approval of a new build and have had to make a couple of deposits on some items needed for the build. Currently, these are supply and fit, so no VAT applied, but I may wish to revert them to supply only once approval was granted. Does it matter that the deposit was paid before the approval as far as a subsequently reclaiming VAT is concerned?
Okay, so the date on the invoice would be key, but if it's somebody coming to site to do work for you, there wouldn't be any, HMRC will never see that invoice from his side. Right? There might be an issue for the contractor if he had a VAT inspection, and if an eagle-eyed officer said, hang on, the planning permission date on this is after the date on this invoice, so he may want to be slightly creative in putting a deposit for works after the date, just to cover himself, not from the self-builder's point of view, from the contractor's point of view. But purchases before the date of your planning permission, as a rule, cannot be reclaimed.
Yeah, that seems fair. So the one on kitchens. Hi, Andrew. Kitchens are normally one of the big ticket items in a new house build. I agree with that. I have a contingency fund, but in event that runs short or out, my plan is to defer the cost with the 5-year interest-free scheme. How can I claim the VAT back on such a scheme, if at all? My local Wren kitchen manager seems unaware on new build VAT rules. He says they always charge VAT and it's up to the customer to claim this back. I thought that if labour and materials were supplied on a new build, then this must be zero rated on their bill and not charged, as HMRC will not repay that.
Okay, so there's two questions there. One about the funding and one about the actual supply and fit. So on the funding, and Wren was going to be the person that I mentioned as an example, right? Wren actually get paid by Barclays Bank. Right? The funding is done by Barclays. So Wren have been paid for your kitchen. You will get a VAT invoice, which can be included in your VAT reclaim. But there's a but. Supply and fit comes in. Quite often, a kitchen manufacturer will supply and fit. So your correct rate of VAT kicks in. So that's 5% and 0 rating. So, but in the kitchen, you cannot reclaim the VAT on your white goods. So that's your kit. So in the kitchen, you can claim for the units, the worktop, the taps, the sink, all these types of things. You cannot reclaim the VAT or have reduced rate of VAT on your fridge, freezer, built-in coffee machine, built-in microwave, all these types of things, the cooker, the hob, all these, none of them qualify for zero rating or reduced rate or VAT reclaim. But also the supply and fit comes into play. Wren, it's difficult, right? I'm not criticising Wren in any way at all. It's difficult. These people are kitchen designers and kitchen salespeople. They're not VAT experts. Also, it's a multinational company, right? What they need to do, they need to ring, the manager needs to ring his VAT advisor within Wren, which I do have their details. Again, feel free to reach out to me, and they will correct that mistake. Very often, I have to contact Wren after a VAT reclaim where HMRC have refused to reimburse the VAT because they've paid VAT on a supply and fit. And in fairness to Wren, they always get it sorted quite quick. So it can happen. If he needs his handheld, please, Alan, ask him to reach out to me.
Yeah, no, we will do. Thanks, Andrew. So Anna has asked, if a contractor is providing fixed price for building a house, including supply and fitting of insulation, cladding, etc., how do we ensure we're not paying VAT on the materials they purchase and supply?
Right, well, you can't. Right? But basically, if you're comfortable with the price they've given you, you just have to go with that. You know, they're in business to make money. Myself, you guys there, it's, you know, everybody's here, and same as the people listening in, they've got a job or they've got a business. Everyone has to make money. It's what makes the world go round. Exactly. But if you're comfortable and happy, you cannot say to I'll give you an example. If you said to a contractor, can I see your invoices because I'm not sure that you're not charging me VAT, they're already thinking these people are hard work. Yeah. Don't know if I want to work for these. And you're starting off on a bad foot. Yeah. If you're trusting these people to build your house, you've got to trust them that the fact that it's VAT, that it's been zero rated. Yeah.
You're right. I mean, it's all built on trust and good communication, and it's a long haul, this. So we need to be working with people that we want to work with and we trust. So, okay, so we have our planning notice is in my name only, but the house will be owned by my wife and myself. Can receipts be in hers or my name or both, or do they have to be only in mine to reclaim the VAT?
No, it's fine. Mm-hmm. Anything, either or, it's not an issue.
Other than somebody else's name.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, you were listening?
I was. Yeah, I'd stopped working for that point. I caught that point, Andrew.
Okay.
So Raju said, is there a specific wording that the planning permission should have on a demolition and rebuild project that shows it qualifies for 0% rating?
No, as long as it explains that the house is being pulled down, you know, how the architect or whoever submitted the planning has worded it is fine, as long as it meets the criteria and it says what it should and what it says on the tin, basically.
Yeah. And just on that, Andrew, there's one that comes to mind. If they're demolishing and wanting to keep some of the foundations, what's the stance point on below or above DPC or? Yeah,
okay. Where I've said knock down and rebuild, as long as you knock anything above ground down, so you knock it flat, what you do with what's in the ground, the slab, is irrelevant. You can use that slab. You can put it somewhere else on site. You can add to that slab. You can use half the existing and do away with the other half. None of that matters at all. Okay. Right? As long as you've knocked down flat. There's a slight complication to that, in that if you leave one facade standing, that would still qualify for VAT reclaim. Where that happens is, in certain areas of the country, the local authority may want to retain a certain look that cannot be, rebuilt. So we'll say, for argument's sake, the front of the house remains, and you've taken the roof off, you've knocked down everything else except for that front of facade, and you've built round, you've added, and that would also qualify as a new build. But that's not straightforward. So if anybody is doing that, Jenny, if you're working on a project that, that criterion, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a chat and look at it.
Perfect. And I think with Daph's question about OpenReach, I think you covered that's not, that there's no qualification in terms of OpenReach as connections.
Yeah.
And then the final one, and if anybody else, we've got another 5 or so minutes to take questions if anybody else wants to quickly pop something in the Q&A or the chat. So final one that we've got on, I'm building a new house in my garden. I do not want to separate the total land into 2 portions. Can I still claim the VAT back?
You can. The only thing that rings alarm bells for me is that if the planning is not in your name, we'll say, for argument's sake, if you've put in the planning and you've not put the client's name in, HMRC may ask for evidence that you own the property. Now, but it's only going to be on one title deed. At that point, I don't think it would endanger your money, but it could be that you have to give the existing title deed to HMRC and say that we have put in for it, that it just hasn't happened yet. And I would have thought that they'd accept that.
Yeah. And I think there is I think, as you said it earlier, Andrew, neither of us are experts in inheritance tax or title deeds, but check at the right point, and also check if you're encumbered with a mortgage on one property and then you separate the title, at some point there'll be inheritance and there could be issues with the mortgage. And if you don't do it in line with the way the planning has been given, it might be something that's ancillary to the main dwelling or attached to it that causes you bigger problems that you're not aware of.
No, so that's a good point, Alan.
That, although it's 20%, might be the smaller of an issue, bigger issue that might raise its head on that one.
Yeah, the lesser of 2 evils there. Yeah.
Exactly. So Raju's come in quick. Would a retaining wall for a multi-level house qualify if not demolished as part of the rebuild?
So if not demolished, yes, it would. Yes, because it's going to be part of the existing new dwelling. So yes, that would be fine. Okay,
so we've got people this is great engagement here. So this is great to see all the questions that we're getting. So
there are also some questions in the chat.
So I'll do the last one, Jenny, that's in the Q&A. Lots of trades need to use the scaffolding. My plan is to get the last user, the solar panel installer, to supply the scaffolding as they don't charge VAT on a new build or extension. Will that fly with HMRC? Interesting use of words there when we're talking about scaffolding. We don't want it to fly.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I can't answer that specific question because I've got lots of ifs and buts, but I can give you some info on scaffolding rental because I was shocked how much scaffolding costs these days, right? See some invoices sometimes and I'm gobsmacked. So there was a court case. Rental as a rule does not qualify for VAT reclaim. So that can be renting machinery, anything of this sort does not qualify. There was a legal challenge on scaffolding because the argument was that there is labour in scaffolding, in erecting and dropping it. It came out of the court case that HMRC will now recognise that scaffolding needs to be split on an invoice for a new build or a conversion. And what they want is a fair amount for the rental in the first instance and a fair amount for the labour involved of putting it up and pulling it down. So we'll say, for argument's sake, a £5,000 is the fee for the scaffolding company, and they've said it's half and half, just for simple terms. So that's £2,500, which would be VATable and not reclaimable for the rent of the scaffolding. But the other £2,500 should be VAT-free on a new build because it's labour, or 5% on a conversion. And then that 5% can get reclaimed in your VAT reclaim. Not many scaffolders will like this, right? My tip is allow them to give you a quote. then say to them, I need you to split the rental and the labour. Once they've done that, you can then say, yeah, that's great, thanks ever so much. Listen, the labour element should be at 5% or 0. But by that point, they've made a commitment. They've given you the rates for those two. Right? So suck them in before you kick the bucket away from them.
Yeah, good. Okay, and there are other, we do have lots of self-build clients ones that are more engaged in building work that actually buy their own scaffold and sell it on. There's lots of community groups out there for the next self-builder coming along will buy it, but just make sure, forget the VAT bit, but just make sure you're complying with the CDM 2015 regulations, and it's tagged and designed and tagged by somebody, a competent professional, for those who are considering that. So we'll jump. Jenny, have you got, so is it in the chat?
Yes.
Perfect. Right, I'm just trying to see where we are. Right, so if a plan allows for an integrated garage and a barn conversion, is it best changing the description?
Sorry, give it to me again.
So if a design allows for an integrated garage within a barn conversion, is it best changing the description?
No, that's fine. An integrated garage in a new build or a conversion is fine. It's part of the dwelling. So that's not an issue in any way at all. The garage thing I touched on is if you've got a garage at the top of the garden, right? So it's a separate building. Normally, other buildings within your the confines of the house do not qualify for VAT reclaim, but a basic car garage will at the top of the garden. But anything integral to the conversion or the new build is fine. It's not an issue. And also, if it's integral and there's then the loft, the bedroom is above the garage, all that's fine. It's still part of the house. So it was only a standalone building where I had the issue about it only being for the car parked section.
Cool. And then, so how long does it usually take HMRC to process the VAT reclaim?
Since they've introduced the 5th of December digital option, they are currently paying jobs out on about 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh, that's really good. So regarding names on accounts, my builder opened an account just for my property, and I spoke to HMRC and they said that was okay, but that I should submit my bank statement showing the transfer of payments and sign each statement. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. The problem with I rung HMRC is that the person that answers the phone is not an expert on this DIY scheme. They will be speaking to Alan Caulfield about VAT on his architect's company, and the next thing they're speaking to Mrs. Williams about her DIY. The next thing they're speaking to Jenny about her business. Then they're speaking to William about childcare. And all these people are actually doing is looking up the legislation on the same website that you and I look at. So that it is a slight problem. But in relation to what's the outcome he's been given, the suggestion, he needs to pay or she needs to pay the supplier direct. So for argument's sake, we'll say it's Jewson, right? And they are correct. They need to evidence payment of each invoice. But I wouldn't say that this is great practice, but it will allow the claim to go through.
Perfect. And I think you've covered this one, but I will just go anyway. John's asked, you explained that a standalone swimming pool doesn't qualify. Does a pool within the main house build?
It does.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I think, and just Jenny might touch on this, but how do people get in touch with you, Andrew, and when do you want to be speaking to people? Because I think I thought I knew a good bit about that, and I think we've done 550 odd builds. It's explained to me or shown to me, and hopefully to the people that are joining us live and the people that will be watching this on demand, that there's a lot to consider. So I think getting somebody like yours advice early and engaging with you and hopefully appointing you to do the reclaim. What do people typically, what's your typical path of people working with you like?
Ideally, I would like to speak to people before they put a brick in the ground, purely because I can understand their project and things like what they do for a living. All these things are relevant to what could happen. And I could then say, make sure you don't do this, make sure you do this. This often happens in this criteria. People often go wrong at this point. Speaking to people costs nothing, Alan, right? I'm quite a people person. I spend half my life with a phone in my ear. I'm quite happy to share knowledge with people. They can find me on all the socials. Just put Andrew Jones Fatman in. I'll jump up somewhere. Do all the national building exhibition shows. WhatsApp me. Find my YouTube channel. There's plenty of. I'm sure people will be able to find me. If they can't find me, I'm not doing my job properly.
Yeah. Or if it's a show, Andrews might be eating somewhere. So,
correct.
Second favourite thing.
Me and Alan share an enjoyment of food and drink.
Yeah, and football. So
and football.
VAT. Yeah, and saving money, getting money back out of HMRC. That's another good.
I wasn't sure if your teams qualify as football. That's why I didn't mention it.
That will definitely get edited out of this. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for that talk. As Alan said, I think everyone here learned a lot. I learned quite a bit during this talk. And during the course of the talk, I've just gone ahead and put together a few top tips or top takeaways. Some of them are similar to those on your last slide, but just to reiterate, the VAT claimback process is for new builds and conversions, and it has to fit into one of those two categories. It is a requirement to have planning permission if you want to claim VAT claimback. Any contractor who's on site for new builds should be charging 0 VAT. This is for labor and materials. For conversion, should be charging 5% VAT, or it will not be reimbursed or accepted during that claimback process. All of your VAT claimbacks must be submitted in a single go within 6 months from the time you have building control completion certificate or with a valuation office letter. And your receipts do not have to be named. However, if they are named, they need to be in your name. So, and then finally, there's no VAT exemption certificate, but a planning decision notice should be sufficient to fulfill that requirement for anyone. So those are my top takeaways. I'm sure all of you have jotted down your own top takeaways. As a reminder, we have recorded this session. We will be editing and posting it so that all of you can watch it again at your leisure, or if anyone has missed it, they'll be able to watch it on demand. If you know someone who could benefit from this, when that is emailed out, please do share. Next month, we will be joined by Dave Gallagher of AC Structures to talk to us about structural considerations and what you should be considering and when you should be considering those things. So we look forward to a conversation from him. As we continue to give these, I think we've all grown in the knowledge of how much there is to know within the self-build process. We've put together a one-day seminar that takes place at the National Self-Build Centre in Swindon. The next seminar is coming up on the 26th of April. We would like to invite all of you to come join us for that. If you're considering a self-build, it is a full day with presentations by experts from anything from finance and insurance through to design and considerations relative to costing and project management, as well as low energy considerations and some of the systems you'll be putting in. So if you are interested in that, either email me directly or visit acarchitects.biz seminars, and we can get you signed up for that next session. And with that, I will just thank Andrew once again for joining us, and please do get in touch with him or us if you need us to put you in contact with him.